All right, Rhino, we got no chairs here at the Country Club of Jackson. We're set up on the balcony, and the sun is beating down on our backs here, but we're going to get through this thing. We are enjoying being here. Beautiful venue, beautiful day. We're going to kick things off this morning with the Speaker of the Mississippi House of Representatives, Jason White. Mr. Speaker, good to see you, sir.
Yes, sir. Good to see you, Gerard. Good morning.
Right. So,
thank you all for having us.
You bet. Okay, so my first question is, what do you think about the greens? Aren't you in the tournament? Oh, you told me. you told me if we couldn't get all set up.
Nobody here within the sound of my voice wants Jason White in the tournament.
Well, good to have you, though, sir. This is a fantastic event for certainly central Mississippi, if not the entire state of Mississippi. A total professional event, a professional tour event. And the Sanderson folks and so many of the other sponsors have been good to make this thing a reality, a possibility. And we want to keep it here as well. But, besides the fact that we get to watch these world-class golfers take on the Country Club of Jackson track, there's so much economic outflow from this tournament, and of course unbelievable amount of money raised for charity. This is just overall a good deal.
It really is a good deal. It's an opportunity certainly to raise funds for a great cause and the mission of Children's and the hospital and what they do.
Yeah.
But it also showcases our state, and one of the things we're really good at is hospitality.
No doubt.
And so it's really cool for the world to see a little part of Mississippi and what great weather today, too.
Yeah, I know. It's Chamber of Commerce weather. As
all the way.
So we're fortunate for that. And for many people, the tour players and others, the media, visitors, fans, the first time visit to Mississippi, it's never what they expect in a positive way. You know the situation. You've dealt with lots of folks in your career where you've entertained guests into our state, and they come here and say, this isn't anything like what I thought it was.
That's right. It gives us an opportunity to put our best foot forward and them to see some of the best things that we have to offer.
Yeah.
Now, if we could get a bunch of these pro golfers to realize that Mississippi is hopefully headed to a no-income tax state, they might want to make this their permanent address and home somewhere in the friendly confines of the state of Mississippi.
In fact, many athletes have, as you know, have chosen, such as Phil Mickelson, to take up residence elsewhere. Of course, their income is taxed based on where they earn it, but much of their other passive income is taxed where they reside. And he took up residence, and he got criticized by a lot of folks on the left. He said, well, I'm leaving because I don't want to pay California's 13% individual income tax rate and then the surcharge on folks that make over $1 million. It does mean something.
It does mean something. Sounds like common sense and being smart to me.
So you had the big policy summit a couple of weeks ago, and the first thing I observed was how well attended that event was. Were you a little surprised you had that many people come out and have an interest in policy that would shape our state?
We were. I mean, I don't know what we expected. I think when we were planning, and Taylor Spillman, my communications director, is here with me today, and she kind of took the brunt of putting that thing on. But when we were getting started, maybe we expected a couple hundred folks to be interested. And, when you start talking about tax policy, it's not a very sexy topic. Most people, they want to talk about the hot button issues of the day, and not necessarily, they start nodding off when you get off into that sort of thing. But I think we presented it in such a way and maybe advertised it in such a way that everything's on the table. There are no predetermined outcomes. We want to hear from everybody, and we want everybody to hear what different thought leaders on the subject have to say. And so I think that just maybe drove that interest a little bit. And we had well over 500 people attend and be there and stayed all day.
Yeah.
Now we also had the governor speak late that afternoon, and we also had revealed our polling data that afternoon. So that there may have been a little bit of hook to keep them there after lunch, but still, it was overall positive. And we hope to kind of take that and build from it.
Okay. Well, you've probably seen news that the governor of the great state of Louisiana to our west has announced he may call a special session to take up some tax reform. Looks like what he's proposing would sort of get them close to where we are, honestly.
Right.
Presently, he's proposing to to eliminate their 3 brackets, reduce that down to 1, and tax all taxable income above $12,500 at 3%. We're headed to a situation where all income above $10,000 would be taxed at 4%. So maybe they're playing a little game of chicken with the state of Mississippi. The governor already, of course, is seasoned on that news.
I think they are. And at our policy summit, we had Arkansas lawmakers there who had led the charge, Chairman Les Eves, on their tax cuts that they passed this year, and they cut to 3.9. They'll eventually get down to 3.9% with their phase-in, and there was no, there's no trick to where the 3.9 came from. It came from us moving to a 4% flat tax state. They're trying to get just below us.
Yeah.
And I thought the governor made some good points in his speech when he talked about the governor of Arkansas, the governor of Alabama, now Louisiana getting in the game. They are terribly competitive, and when it comes to these things. And so, if we want to stay in the game, there are things we can do. And somebody said, "Well, how many people can you point to that have come because of y'all's tax cut from 2022?" I can't point to a single person, but here's what I know: that's one more positive thing. If there are barriers, or if there are things that make it more attractive, that certainly is a positive. That's on the positive side of the ledger if we're considering Mississippi and what we're, when folks are making decisions about their businesses and locations and investment of capital and those kind of things. We've proven we're pro-business, low regulation, right-to-work state. We can improve on the tax structure a little bit and keep our infrastructure strong and site readiness, which we've invested heavily in as a state.
Yeah.
We're a player. We're a player.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
And I think that's why you see other southern states kind of sitting up and taking notice and having to take that next step.
Yeah. Well, it's a tool. It's more than anything. It's an arrow in the quiver. It's a sweetener. It's a differentiator. And while maybe at this point we can't point to specific individuals who came to our state as a result of our reduction, what we can certainly look to is documented evidence that folks did move from the high-tax northeast and western states into Texas, Tennessee, Florida,
Yep.
seeking that lower tax rate.
Yep, that outward migration from those places, and we would only stand to get some of that by being competitive in that space, so to speak. So
yeah,
we're going to try to continue to build on that. We still have a lot of work to do, and I don't know the answers when it comes to workforce and education and positioning our people in a better stance when it comes to an educated, skilled workforce. We've got some work to do there, especially with our low labor participation rate. We've got some work to do, but smart people are working on it. And anything we can do, we want to. There's so much, I'm kind of a limited government kind of guy, so I don't know what levers we can pull or how many we can pull to move the needle in that direction, and be positive there. But we're going to work on it.
Yeah. Well, now what about many who are calling for a reduction or a total end to the sales tax on groceries in lieu of reducing or eliminating the income tax?
That call is out there, and I think part of that is driven by the inflationary factors that have hit not only our state but our entire country. And so folks feel it, they see it, they know. My wife, for instance, she goes to the grocery store usually once a week. She knows about what her bill usually is.
Sure.
And she comes in and says, it is this. So they feel and see that, as people shop retail, they see it, especially at the grocery store in prices. And so the first place they look is that high grocery tax. And it is no denying we are one of the highest in the nation. So while we would like to provide relief there, and that may be part of the equation as we try to build a consensus around tax reform, that may be, some of our colleagues in the House and Senate may demand that be part of the package. As you know, that's a double whammy, because if we do cut it, municipalities are asking us to absorb that as a state so that we don't cut them, if you will, in the way that they fund their city governments. So, and that is the number one driver of tax collections for municipalities is the grocery tax, especially small and medium-sized towns in our state. That is the number one generator of sales tax. And so if you cut it, that's thereby cutting their diversion. Gotcha. And they're very sensitive to that. And I understand. I've lived in that world. I was on the board of aldermen in West, my little town where I live.
Rely on that.
We rely on it. And so that comes with that caveat of, okay, you can cut it, but you've also got to realize that kind of has a double hit in the form of if we're going to keep our cities whole, which we've committed to do that.
You gonna hang around? We're gonna talk.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we're at the Sanderson Farms Championship, the Country Club of Jackson, visiting with Speaker of the House Jason Club of Jackson for the Sanderson Farms Championship PGA event taking place. Got kicked off earlier in the week. The pros are on the course right now, putting their scores together. But we're speaking with Speaker of the House Jason White. So we were talking about the policy summit you had. By the way, I want to just applaud you because I think it was a fantastic idea when we're out of session to have an event that brings so many people together where you can dive into these critical issues and gain input and perspective before we get rushed when we get in that dang session.
Right, and we talked about that a little bit that day, and a few speakers even touched on it. And I got that question from the audience: "Was why are y'all doing this now?" And we just felt like when you get there and in session, and because you've been there and been in the thick of it and seen it, that's the number one excuse anybody uses on anything is, "Oh, we don't have enough time. Deadlines are here," and those deadlines do hit pretty quick, and we'll have 2,000 or 3,000 bills hitting, and that's the easiest cop-out on any issue, not just tax reform, but any issue, is to say, that's too complex. We hadn't had time to look at that bill. It's 400 pages. We're just going to kill it. So we wanted to get it out there without that pressure necessarily of session and the time crunch where people can, somebody has a good idea, let's go explore it, kick it around and see if it works or doesn't work without that time pressure. And so I appreciated certainly my House colleagues and the guys from the Senate that participated. I appreciated them giving of their time and attention and brain power to the conversation and being willing to work on it. And they've been able to, they've been willing to do that.
It feels like, Mr. Speaker, there's still somewhat of a gulf between the House and the Senate on the attitude just towards overall tax reform.
It is a little bit, and that probably came through in some of the presenters, at the summit. But they hadn't closed off the idea from the Senate. That I do think maybe, some of the leaders in the Senate are very focused on cutting the grocery tax. And I've been willing for that to be part of the equation. The number one goal, if there's room to cut taxes, I think the place for us to start is with the income tax. Now, if it takes cutting the grocery tax to be a part of an overall package, I'm all ears if we can make it work. Unlike the PERS issue where the math isn't tricky, it's just the politics.
That's right.
All right, on this issue, the math is what's tricky.
I totally agree.
The politics are good for Republicans to be cutting taxes, but the math is tricky, and depending on which economist you listen to and which person you listen to as that money comes in from Mississippians through sales tax and income tax and other taxes, when you pull a lever over here, you squeeze that balloon, where's it going to blow up somewhere else? And so we want to do it right. We want to be smart about it. But we continue to hear from folks who want to see this. And in addition to that, we continue to run almost $1 billion surplus.
Yeah.
And that's on top of what I feel like is a very robust budget. I mean, we put another $200 million in K-12 education last year. So when somebody tells you we're still not putting enough emphasis on it, we're spending over 50 cents of every dollar you send state government to K-12 public education.
Yep.
I think we have supported not only that, but some of our other places maybe where we have neglected in the past somewhat. So with those surpluses continuing to be there, you're going to hear a conservative Republican legislature, specifically House Representatives, talk about trying to find a way to cut taxes and move us forward and keep us extremely competitive in a not just a national economy but a global economy. Well,
we've also we've stroked checks to the Department of Transportation too, essentially coming out of these surplusses.
We have, and that's where the lion's share. Right? That's where the lion's share of those surpluses have gone. Yeah. In addition to fully funding our rainy day fund at almost $700 million now, and in addition to that full rainy day fund, we have a little over $1 billion in the checking account, if you will. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you, politicians get itchy trigger fingers when there's $1 billion laying around, that's not earmarked somewhere. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, projects bubble to the top that maybe might not otherwise have found themselves in a core function of government all of a sudden. And folks hear from folks back home. They want a project funded. Maybe there's a highway project or a bridge or something that has lacked, reaching that level of importance that it really finds its way in. Now, all of a sudden, with extra money, I would rather you keep that money,
sure,
spend it in our economy, in our state, and drive capital investment in a way that everybody benefits from long haul.
We had some major reform in the way we fund K-12 education. I think finally we got a formula that the vast majority of the people in that capital can understand and could actually explain. I'm not sure they could before. I'm not sure that anybody could, honestly. So we did some reform, but we really stopped short of making any major amendments to education choice programs in our state. There was some legislation to do that. It really didn't get the traction it needed.
We didn't. And a little bit of that's on me. We were running 2 tracks in the education deal last year. We had some choice stuff, advances over here, and that's funding piece.
Yeah.
And I learned this as speaker in my first session. You kind of got to pick a few horses, and you get too spread out, you get nothing. So having said that, we ended up putting all our eggs in the funding formula basket and said, let's focus on this. Let's try to get that formula right, with the emphasis by the form of the weights that we put in the formula for different things that we wanted to incentivize, like career tech. Let's get that right, get our schools funded, show that we're putting our money where our mouth is, so that now we're ready to talk about the accountability piece and the choice piece, and that is going to be where our focus will entirely be from the education standpoint this session. And we'll probably start mainly with public to public. Now, we just had the ratings come out for all our public schools, and
yeah,
you probably saw them.
Yep.
We've got a lot of school districts, and the accountability, look, there's no question we have made major strides. And so I don't want to, what I'm fixing to say, I don't want to in any way throw shade on the strides that we have made and what our educators have been able to do. But I don't know that our accountability model right now truly measures where we are. If we've only got 3 or 4 failing schools in our state, I don't know that that thing is accurately measuring all the things that parents and taxpayers expect. So we're going to look close at that model. Now, understand that there's going to be, MDE is already working on a reset of how they want to do it.
Yeah.
My people have been meeting with them all summer from the Speaker's office, Cole Butler specifically, who runs point for us on education, trying to see what direction MDE wants to go with that accountability model. If that's something we can get behind, do we have tweaks we want to make to that, and what does that look like? Now, on top of that, and we just polled it, and we revealed this data at the policy summit last week. That polls as high as getting rid of the grocery tax or getting rid of the income tax.
Yeah.
Parents want choice, and that cuts across Democratic voters, Republican voters, in all regions of our state. It polled as high as anything we did, and we're going to act on that. I feel like we've got voters, taxpayers, the average Mississippian on our side on that issue, and they don't really have a lobbyist at the Capitol that's there representing them. Now, we have lots of smart folks that are there saying this is the way of the future. This is what's best for our people. But nobody's representing that mom and dad who want something better for their kids who are stuck in a failing school district. They love their community. They want to be there, but they would like something better and different. And we want to give them those choices. And you're going to see that come from the House, and we'll see how far we get it.
You were talking about just half of our budget going to education. There's certainly evidence and reports and research done that suggests that an outsized amount of it goes to administration, doesn't go to the classroom, and then we've got probably more districts than we need. Could we perhaps start the discussion about addressing that?
I think that's part of it. I think you're going to see lawmakers dig in on that. I would contend we are fully funding education now. Certainly we are by the new measurement of the new formula, and I think the new formula is going to call for about $30 million more this year. In our JLBC meetings last week, that's kind of what that formula calls for, and certainly we've got insurances going up and the PERS increase of 0.5%. So more money will again go into education, but it will be fully funded, and to whom much is given, much is expected. And so we think the time is right for the conversation surrounding what parents want and expect. They pay the bill. They're the ones that send the money for us to fund schools. They should have a say in what that looks like. And certainly they do have a say through their local school boards. I'm not diminishing that. But the policy should reflect parents have the final say. Well, they do in every other aspect of raising their children.
Yeah.
Decide whether or not they're going to take them to church. They decide how they're going to dress. They shop for them for their food. I don't know why we think we just remove that choice when it comes to the number one thing, and that is educating that child. So
sounds like it's going to be an interesting session. A lot of very high-profile issues, and in two segments, we can't even get to all of it. But we appreciate you being with us here today.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yes,
Beautiful
sir.
day. Glad